Great question. So the short answer is that BitGold has nothing to do with Bitcoin, except for the fact that there's 7 letters in the word Bitcoin and 7 letters in the word BitGold, and they both start with a bit. But it's not a secret that both Josh and I were inspired by Bitcoin. We spent a lot of time studying everything we could about Bitcoin, and we think that A, we're not smart enough to yet know, and B, Bitcoin's technology is so profound that in some way, shape, or form, in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we'll be looking back at Bitcoin as having affected some type of a change in the way we exchange value. I'm pretty confident of that it will mark that inflection point in history where we all of a sudden figured that we don't need to use all these concentric circle-based organizations built on top of an antiquated infrastructure to simply exchange value between each other. The issue that we saw with Bitcoin was our motivations for starting something like BitGold or running a business like Gold Money were motivations that came from the understanding of monetary history and the interest in preserving our users' wealth and democratizing their access to financial services. And the more that we studied Bitcoin, we felt that at its core, the core philosophy of Bitcoin was inconsistent with the advancements we've made in society and specifically in consumer finance with respect to consumer protections, reversibility of transactions, know your customer and anti-money laundering regulations. And we felt that if we could supplement a mathematical token, which is what Bitcoin is, with a physical vaulted piece of gold, we could achieve a closed loop network more similar to PayPal that would allow us to have transaction reversibility, fully known customers, KYC, best services or best class anti-money laundering policies, and still get all the benefits and promise that Bitcoin holds in the world of value transfer. So we'd still allow you to exchange value very quickly. We would still allow you to access ordinarily sophisticated financial services. So you could be living in Mexico and accumulating a surplus of gold in London, and the next time the peso gets devalued by 30 or 40%, you're sitting pretty, you're fine. Your work, your labor, your time, your family's time wasn't devalued because of some exogenous reason.
Yeah, when we look at Bitcoin, one thing that we really like is the utility of the network, and a lot of people make the idea or analogy that Bitcoin's token value is so strong because of the network effect and the value of the network. But that's exactly what we're doing with gold. By creating this value in the network where people can transact instantly and free across borders with an underlying commodity that's always existing and fully owned. There's a lot of value to that, removing all the friction of foreign exchange and removing the friction of correspondent banks as money moves from one banking ledger to another one in another currency. So just like Bitcoin, there's many use cases in remittance markets, in cross-border payments, cross-border transactions on mobile phones and in-app phones anywhere in the world. So there's a lot of value to our network, but as Roy was saying, that network is also protected by a lot of consumer protections, reversibility of transactions. We know that we know our customers on the network and they're not engaged in fraud, and so there's a lot of protections with all of that value to the network.
Yeah, like consumer protection, for example. What happens when you use a Bitcoin to purchase something from a local merchant, and you were perpetuating a crime. So the merchant sold you a bicycle, and you paid with a stolen Bitcoin. What is the chain of custody? These are issues that we dealt with in the time of Solomon, and we evolved and we graduated, and we figured out that there had to be a resolution system. And what I think is most naive about Bitcoin, or what I think is the Achilles heel with Bitcoin, is I don't believe there's been sufficient thought on these topics. And the issue is that if Bitcoin were to implement all of these features, then what advantage does it have over low latency fiat in the form of like a MasterCard payment or a tokenized Visa card, on your Apple Pay? Because ultimately, the value of those networks, like a Visa or MasterCard, is transaction reversibility and merchant resolution, and so it's going to be interesting. We think that the greatest advantage that we have is that, for close to a decade, we both spent, our lives reading everything we could about monetary history, physics, anthropology, and all in the pursuit of understanding natural systems and gold. And when we were doing this, Josh was doing it as an engineer, and then a senior analyst at Goldman Sachs. I was doing it because I have this quirk where I have to understand how things work, and I couldn't understand how gold worked. And in order to understand how gold worked, I had to understand how money worked, and couldn't understand how money worked until I understood how markets worked, and I couldn't understand how markets worked until I understood how psychology worked, and it was this rabbit hole. But eventually, I did get to the bottom of it. Money is proof of time. It's proof that its owner has expended time and effort in order to gain ownership of the money. And because of the laws of physics in our universe, it's very difficult to prove ownership of anything over the course of time, because time is always fighting against you, because time creates cycles through which most of what we have around us rots or evaporates or expires. And so the perfect money has to be immortal to time. It has to outlive time. And when you get down to the physics, there aren't many elements in the periodic table that are immortal to time. But then you get to these 8 noble metals, and those are, for whatever reason, at the inception of the universe, immortal to time. They last forever. There's a fixed quantity of them in the earth, in our atmosphere, and there will always be a fixed quantity of them, eons from now. And as you work your way through those 8, all of the 8 would be fine, but 4 of the 8 are just extremely rare, infinitesimally rare. Like, they're basically, the size of a bowl. That's how much, you might have like worth of, osmium or iridium. I'm probably wrong on that, but it's very rare. And the other 3 are all indiscernible. They all look like silver. So if I had them on this table, you wouldn't know what was palladium, what was platinum, or what was silver. And then you have gold. And gold is not only rarer than those other 3, it's discernible instantly. It's yellow and shiny. And so over time, by default, one of the 4 had to become money, because nothing else could prove that you expended time to accumulate it. But through a Darwinian process, gold ascended as the perfect money because it was easily discernible, it had a lower melting point, so it was easier to divide, and it became the social network that everyone wanted to use. I think we began to learn an even more interesting lesson, right, Josh?
Yeah, and so once we had our experiment with these elements and understood gold ascending as money because of the way it could withstand time, we realized that that's very, very important for cooperation. We realized that when someone's exchanging goods in a direct barter system, it just doesn't always make sense to bring all of your goods to the center of the market and figure out what's worth what at any given time. So money always has to be superior to the good you're trading it for, so that it's always accepted, and it always has to last until the next time you trade. And so gold really is nothing but a very big sharing economy. It's you never really own the gold. It's going to outlive you and outlast you anyways. What you're doing is you're enabling cooperation and allowing everybody to actually work and produce more than anyone can do individually. So gold really enabled this division of labor, in that a group of people working together can create a prosperity and surplus on a way that they couldn't do before. Now, when you look at the internet and looking at this global cooperation now, that because we're so connected and interconnected, we come back to that importance of you've got to have a money that's always more important in the very short term, or always more valuable than that good, so that we can always be cooperating on this global scale and creating prosperity, not just locally, not just where someone has the best banking system or the best closest to the banking system. It needs to be ubiquitous, just like the mobile phones and internets are, where people can always have valuable money for their valuable time, no matter where they are in the world.
The internet has the power to change everything, and all the rules and all the cycles that we've been used to throughout history. And it's done that with education so far and information. It's allowed information to be democratized, and that's why you see all these incredible trends in literacy in the developing world. In a way, they're more literate than the developed world, and that's why most of the top universities today have a majority of their incoming students come from the developing nations. Now imagine that the internet, which is simply a plumbing system that's free, can distribute financial services. So, and it has its own currency that anyone could accumulate through a meritocratic process, which just simply means that if you do better than someone else, you'll be ranked better. There won't be anyone externally pushing you down or deciding that you're worth less or you've done less good. There's a rating system that's very clear. And rating systems are important because they instill discipline. And through discipline, we accumulate savings. And through savings, we have a more stable base for economic growth. And we have more resilient business cycles. And that's really how we achieve prosperity and improve the quality of life of our species.
But one thing that's very important to think about when you're talking about savings and prosperity, and like you said, the meritocracy, there's still an underlying human element that when you see people being left behind in a system, I believe it's a natural instinct to try to help those people. And so it's oftentimes when you talk about gold or capitalism, there's this idea that people are just trying to get the most. I don't believe that's true. And what you have when you have a fair measuring system is you can actually measure and see the people being left behind. And I believe that creates an ability for humans to revert to their natural state of trying to figure out how to create prosperity for everybody. And we just can't do that when our measuring stick is always changing. We don't know why. Two workers in different parts of the world are getting completely. One may be completely screwed by it because their measuring stick is just totally volatile in their currency. And so this allows people to connect and figure out where we need to solve problems.
Yeah, think about it this way. When you travel abroad and you go from imperial to metric, it's like the biggest deal. Kilometers, miles, yards, feet, inches, centimeters. Well, imagine you had 160 of those in each country. And imagine that the numbers were not fixed but variable. They changed, like a timer, and sometimes they grew, sometimes they contracted. That's the kind of system we have today, and the predictability is gone. And so this creates a situation where the haves, people like Josh and I, are able to game the system. And the way we game the system is we just buy assets. And the second we accumulate more cash, we buy more assets. And because we know that the measuring stick will always be eroded and the asset prices will rise. And occasionally we'll sell some assets, but we just use it to buy other assets. And what this creates is a scenario where we have the least amount of purchasing power decay. So we will always have maximum exposure to assets, and with leverage we can mortgage your exposure. So we can actually leverage someone that's a have-not without them even knowing, by simply accumulating leverage. But under a gold standard, all of a sudden our lives get measured by something that has to be mined from the earth with an input of energy and labor. And that is almost like pulling on this rubber band. So it's almost like, we were running loose, it's like you give the dog some slack and then you just pull on it, right? That's what this system will do. But in response, or in return, what would happen is we would immediately have less. We would immediately have less, and the rest of the world would have more, and we'd be just fine. We're ready to compete in that world. I'm ready. But this current kind of reality that we're facing is unprecedented. Anyone with any financial knowledge that isn't part of the central actors will acknowledge that this is at best an experiment, and at worst a major diversion from how we achieve prosperity over thousands of years. We're really not into fear-mongering because we feel that was one of the main impediments that the gold community had. But you really have to question, if you read your economic history and you read the various cases of hyperinflation and or abrupt devaluations in currencies, whether all the signs aren't there. It seems to me that 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 signs that were present in the Weimar Republic are present now, and that 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 of the signs that were present during John Law are present now. And I think that we don't want to see that be the resolution. We really don't. We don't want gold to go to $10,000.
Because if gold goes to 10,000, your food prices have gone up 10 times as well.
Exactly.
So you're not getting rich off of that. You're for the most part, everyone's getting poor.
Yeah, what we want to do is we think there's a way out, and we think the way out the way out involves people taking responsibility for their savings and payments, and having the opportunity to express themselves, just as we've reached a pinnacle of social progress, where we are now able to express ourselves as we please. We're now able to marry who we want and do what we want. We should be able to use whatever currency we want as long as we're doing it legally and within the spirit of the law.
There's a lot of news about Bitcoin in Greece and what's happening there. Well, I think it's a very unfortunate situation with what's happening. I don't want to comment too much on the politics or economics, but if you look at the actual use case today, with something you can do on our platform, say I'm a freelance graphic designer or someone working in Greece right now that can't access their bank account. With a platform like BitGold or with an internationally accessible platform, they could actually be still doing that work and not have to they'd actually earn gold on the platform. So they could send an invoice to Canada. I can pay with my Canadian credit card. They now have gold in London that they can put onto a euro debit card and actually spend euros locally. And where I'm going with all of this, the point is that the gold is always there. It's always fully reserved. There's no reason in our system to have a bank run because it's not been overlent out. It's always the person's assets on BitGold.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting when you consider if everyone in Greece knew about BitGold, how that whole crisis would have played out. It probably would have played out a lot differently. And I think that our mission in life is to ensure that at some point in the future, the next time there will be an inevitable crisis like that, our solution will help people. And it definitely did. We did see a spike in Greek signups, but unfortunately they couldn't use their credit cards at that point to fund their BitGold accounts. But yeah, these are early days. We are extremely thankful, honored, continue to work hard every day for you, and thank you for the trust that you've placed in us.